So I'm here today to talk about athletics with Steve Eford, our athletic director, and Sarah Larson, a Trinity parent and coach, and I'm excited about this conversation. It's part one of a two-part conversation. Today we're going to talk about why we do athletics at Trinity, the big picture, and we've always said at Trinity that why is the most important question, and I think the answer to that is the same for all of our athletes, whether they are elite athletes that may go on to play in college, even Division I level, to the novice athlete that's just trying a sport out for the first time. The purpose of Trinity Athletics is to fulfill the mission of Trinity, to offer a classical Christian education, and that means developing two things in students, faith and virtue. And this is one of the things that we always aim at. We've got a compass of the four cardinal virtues. It's similar to our digital compass, and we'll share that with all of our parents so you can take a look at it. I just have to say that I think there may be no place at Trinity more than athletics where these virtues are developed. And I wonder if you guys could introduce yourselves and just tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe a sport or a coach that made an impact on you. Steve, you want to start?
Sure. I'm Steve Eford. I'm the athletic director here at Trinity School. In the past, I've coached basketball and tennis, and like a lot of you all played a lot of different sports growing up. And I think I'd look at two examples for coaches in my past that shaped me, and one of them was somewhat of a negative experience. I had a coach in middle school that coached me in a way, and I felt like coached the team in a way. I was so scared to fail that I wasn't willing to put myself out there and make mistakes. So in that way, I found myself holding back a lot in practices and games, and I was too scared to mess up. And on the flip side of that,
failing is such an important part of learning through athletics, right?
Sure, absolutely. And that's something we want our student athletes to do, is we want them to push themselves to the point of failure. If you're never pushing yourself to the point of failure, then you're not getting any better. So that's a trait that I knew when I coached and when I helped mentor coaches, that's something we really wanted to instill. On the flip side of that, when I got to high school, I had a coach that was really positive. He was very hard on us at the same time, but was also positive, encouraged us, gave correction where necessary, but also was encouraging and positive, and just felt really uplifted each day to do our best, and we really excelled as well through that. So
yeah, that's great. I think it was John Wooden who said that a great coach is one who can give correction to a player without creating resentment or wanting that player to get better, want to get better.
Right.
So that's what this coach did for you.
Sure, absolutely. And pushed ourselves to the point of failure where we messed up, but then, if you push yourself to that point enough times, then you correct those mistakes and you're able to move forward in a positive way.
Yeah. Sarah, you introduce yourself and tell us about a coach.
Sure. My name is Sarah Larson, and I played tennis and basketball mostly growing up, and then my story about a coach actually got me started in my running career as a junior in track season. I didn't start until my junior year of high school. Coach Krolowitz, as we called Coach K, of course there's another Coach K around here that's a great coach, but he was my Coach K in high school. And he saw me running on the basketball court, and he's like, you should come out and run for me. And so I did, came out, and first day of track practice, he put me in from 100 to 1 mile. And he's like, I think I'm gonna put you in the 800 because that's a good distance for you, right in the middle. And I came in second in the state that year in the 800. And so that kind of started my running career, and I've continued that on. Ran in college for the University of South Carolina, and now I get to coach other people as they come through in cross country and track.
And you're a triathlete yourself, right?
Yes, I also do triathlon from sprint distance all the way up to Ironman.
Yeah,
so.
That's great. So I want to talk a little bit about this idea of developing virtue in our kids. And we talk about the four cardinal virtues of wisdom and the virtues of self-control, justice, and courage. Those are like the primary colors, if you will, of virtue, that if you've got those right, you can build any other virtues out of them. They're sort of the fundamental hinge virtues. And I think of the ways in which athletics develops those. And I think that it's different sports in different ways, but I wondered if you all could talk just a little bit about ways you have seen in the different sports you've been involved with, or Steve, as you've observed lots of different sports, as an athletic director here and at a previous school, how you've seen some of those virtues developed in student athletes.
I'd be happy to start. I think one of the biggest stories that stands out to me is I was coaching basketball a handful of years ago, and we had students running sprints at the end of practice, and they had to hit a certain time. If they didn't hit the time, then they had to keep track of that. And at the end of practice, they all had to step up and run those ones again that they missed. So it had a lot to do with honesty. We weren't keeping track, and we weren't keeping tabs on who had finished the time. So at the end of the drill, if we ran 5 sprints, we said, how many did you miss? If you missed one, you step up on the line and run another one. And several did have to run again, and it came down to the last one, and we asked who missed this last one, and only one student raised his hand. And as he did that, all the seniors on our team also, who had all made their times, they all stepped on the line with him. And I'm getting goosebumps as I'm telling that story because that was such a special moment. But they all ran the sprints with him, and then the whole team joined in, and everybody ran that last sprint. Wow. And I remember at our end-of-year banquet saying if we didn't accomplish anything else that whole season, we had a successful season, wins and losses as well, but if we didn't accomplish anything else, then that was just great honesty, integrity, sportsmanship, camaraderie, all those things just were
solidarity with the team, yeah.
In that moment, all those things came together, and it's just a really special thing to see.
That's great. It also, I think, captures Trinity's motto of non nobis, not to us, Lord. It's sort of it's not about me alone. We're together in this.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, that's powerful. Sarah, what do you think of? I know track and cross country certainly push kids to develop these virtues.
Definitely. There's a huge mental aspect of running, especially in the distance when you get 15 to 30 minutes on your own in the woods. There's lots that goes through your mind. And trying to stay positive through that time. You can be fighting, okay, I'm not very good at this, I'm really tired, I'm not sure if I can finish. And working with the athletes to be able to take those negative self-talk and replace that with something else, because it's not enough just to say, no, I'm not going to think that way anymore. You have to actually replace it with something that's going to be better. And we have a scripture that we use for the season that they can say in their heads. That's one of the ways that we do that. And I think one story from this year where we kind of learned for the cross-country team, the guys had a shot at winning conference this year, and we lost, came in second. We missed it by a little bit. And as we were going into states, I tried to refocus us a little bit because we had gotten so focused on place and we got to be better than this team or not better. It's all depending on our results. And so before we went to states, I was like, we got our focus off. Our focus should be on doing our best, doing the best that we can do. And we can't control how that stacks up against other people. And we kind of started the season knowing that the guys, we could put 5 people under 19 minutes. That was our goal, was to try to get 5 guys for the 5K to be under 19 minutes. And that usually was one of the top teams in the state. And so I refocused us that week and was like, we're going to do our best, and however it stacks up is how it stacks up. And when we got to state meet, it was just a fun day to hang out and have fun with the kids. And then they went out and ran. And the guys not only had 5 under 19, but we had 6 that went under 19.
That's great.
So it was just nice to be able to change their mindset on trying to compare themselves with other people to, we're going to do the best that we can do, and we're going to use the gifts that God has given us to the best of our abilities and to His glory.
That's great.
And really to see, you could look at sports, some sports you look at as individual sports. You say cross country, well, we're just out there running, but to see y'all's team this year do that was amazing, and to see the camaraderie from the boys' team when the girls are out there running, the boys are cheering them through, and the girls and all congratulating themselves at the end of that day was a really special day. And finishing 4th in the state was a great accomplishment. So.
Yeah, that's great. I think of track and cross country as sports that really require, we think about wisdom as a virtue. You have to think about what you're doing. You have to understand your opponent. You have to understand the course. You have to understand yourself, how your body works. You have to think about how fast I'm going to go out, or how how to pace yourself. Those things. It's wonderful. I remember When my daughter ran track and cross country, there were a couple of boys on her team. They were actually twins, and they kept spreadsheets of all the guys in the conference and themselves as well, and the stats, and they studied them. I mean, they were gaming this. They were really working hard to. So it's a sport, as you say, involve our thinking and not just our bodies. How about courage? Courage is the virtue that people say is kind of the key. Like if you don't have courage, then all the other virtues will probably fail you at some point. That ability to take risks is one part of courage, and the other part of courage is the ability to push through when it's hard and you feel like you just can't push anymore. And I wonder, I know that you've seen that in different sports here at Trinity.
I'd say a couple examples come to mind, and I think whenever we offer tryouts for a team, I think number one, that takes courage for students to come to try out for
Absolutely.
a team because they're putting themselves out there. They know they're going to be evaluated on how they stack up skill-wise and effort-wise and attitude-wise to all the other student athletes that are coming out. So I always just try to say, first day of practice, first day of tryout, second, third day, I really respect and appreciate all you being out here because there's a lot of people that are sitting at home right now that didn't want to do that. And we talked about being scared to fail. Some people don't come out because they're scared to fail. And so everyone that came out for that tryout is willing to put themselves out there. So that's a great example. So whatever team you land on, even if you do get cut, you came out there and you put yourself out there, and that's a great thing to learn. I think one example that pops out in my mind right now is a student that we had that did track and field last year for the first time, and he'd never done it before. He came out and really gravitated toward a field event, and he just kept going with it, pushed himself, going to some camps over the summer, and has really latched onto that and really become successful in that, qualified for the state meet last year. And if he would have been too frightened or too scared or not willing to put himself out there, he never would have experienced that, and he's got a chance, had a great year last year and has a chance for a really solid year this year.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. There's another track athlete last year. It was his first year out as well. And I knew that I've seen him jump over things lots of times, and he's very agile and that kind of thing. And so I said, hey, why don't you try high jump? Now, Trinity does not have a high jump pit to practice, so it wasn't until the first meet. And he just did it because I asked him to. And he qualified for states by the end of the season as well, and just because he was willing to give something a try. You don't know if you're going to be good or have gifts until you give it a try.
Yep.
And the other thing that I like about running, swimming, any of the individual type sports is that there is a team function, but then there's also the aspect that it's you against the clock. And so even if you're not the fastest runner or the fastest swimmer out there, you can still keep track of how you're improving over the season and be able to gauge success in that way as well.
That's great. Yeah.
One of my favorite quotes that y'all may have heard is Teddy Roosevelt, "Man in the Arena," and it's a really impactful quote to me because there were times in my life when I was younger that I was scared to fail, and I didn't go do things. And I look back and say, man, I just want to kick myself for not taking advantage of some opportunities. And I didn't realize that until I got older, and so being able to impart some of that onto our student athletes here is a great goal for me. But the man in the arena, the short version is, it's not the critic who counts. It's the one who's in that arena, who's competing, and win or lose, you pass out from exhaustion, but you were the one that was in that arena, giving of yourself. And it takes a lot to play a game in front of your classmates, and to maybe in some cases sit on the bench and not play in the whole game. But to put on that Trinity uniform and be out there representing our school, representing their families, and really representing God from a Christian school, from Trinity School, that takes a lot of courage just to do that. And so I'm proud of all our student athletes that step out that are willing to put themselves out there.
Yeah. Another of the cardinal virtues is self-control or discipline. And I think this is one of the things that sports do for us so well. And of course, it carries over into other parts of students' lives because discipline is so important in their studies and so many things. So maybe you could talk a little bit what is the discipline that's demanded of an athlete here at Trinity?
I think showing up to practice day in and day out throughout the whole season, is a discipline within itself, and being able to balance your practice time and your studies and making sure that you are making the grades in the classroom and that's not suffering from your being involved in athletics. Because as important as athletics is, the academics will always take precedence over athletics. But I kind of feel like the athletic piece gives the students a chance to come out, burn some energy, and it actually helps your brain focus more once you go back to start homework in the evenings.
Yeah. Well, and certainly there's a finite amount of time, and so there are these tensions, right? For athletes really have to be disciplined and apportion their time carefully and use it wisely. But I do think there's a principle of life that discipline in one area of our life spills over into discipline in other areas. So it's not inevitable, but I think the student who is learning discipline on the court or on the field can practice that discipline also in the study, in his or her studies. So there's often a virtuous cycle that goes there, and I hope that's the case.
Absolutely, and just thinking about, there's a lot of wrongs that can happen to you if you're on the court playing basketball. You get fouled, the ball goes out of bounds, the ref doesn't call it. How do you respond to that? And what do you blow up and do you get a technical foul and you exacerbate the problem, or do you just say, you get upset about it, but you internalize it and you sprint back down the court and make a good play on the other end? And that can certainly transfer to life. What do you do then when you're driving down the road to work and somebody cuts you off in your car? Do you make it worse, or do you just deal with it and move on? So certainly there's so many lessons of self-control, and that's just one small example.
Even for our coaches and
Absolutely.
our fans as well, right?
Absolutely.
We all have
Yes.
to exert self-control.
Exactly.
And it's very easy to see when someone does not exert self-control. I think that's the easiest thing to see in sports. You're on display, you're in the arena.
Yeah. So there are these cardinal virtues that are part of living well for all of us. There also are the theological virtues of faith, hope, and love that crown them. And particularly as we think about Trinity as a Christian school, I'm interested in the ways in which our athletic programs help students develop their faith. How do our sports teams help them learn to love God and love others well? And I'd love to hear your comments on that, ways in which you've seen that happen.
I would say last year during track season, I was working on the mental aspects of running and competing. And I had been running through the Trinity neighborhood myself, and I started praying for other folks while I was running, and it gave me something to focus on besides like, okay, I'm not feeling all that great, or my legs are tired, or my lungs are hurting, or whatever. And it took the focus off of kind of the negative and helped me to focus on someone else that I could pray for. And so when I came to practice that day, I had the students, I had some Sharpie markers, and I was like, write down the name of someone that you could pray for and that you could dedicate this race to. I think it was right before conference. And I know that meant a lot to some of the students because we had a former student that had just passed away. And so they were able to write down, I'm going to be running for Weston and be able to dedicate this run to him, and to focus on not just ourselves, but on others as well.
That's great. Yeah, Steve?
Yeah, I think a neat story I've heard in the last 3 or 4 weeks is someone told me the biggest spiritual impact that they've had while they've been at the school is through being on a team and through their coaches working through things with them and talking to them. It's just such a unique opportunity because our coaches are with these students after school when they're maybe a little bit looser, or they're with them on the bus, or they're with them at Chick-fil-A after the games, or they're hanging out with them for 3 or 4 hours at the state meet. So there's just so many opportunities where those conversations can come up about life, and an awesome impact, an awesome opportunity for our coaches and for our kids to see things and to travel across the state and to represent Trinity School and represent God to all the schools we play against. And that's a really neat opportunity for them.
Yeah.
And to compete. And also we want our students to compete as hard as we can. I think it's great to see, and we'll talk about that in another segment, competition, but for the folks outside this community to see, and for us as a community to see, we can be Christians and we can compete as hard as we can, tooth and nail with our opponent, and go 100%. but we can also pick up our opponents when we knock them down, and we can continue to play as hard as we can. So I think it's great for folks to see we can be great, amazing, fierce competitors, and we can also be really compassionate and loving at the same time as Christians.
Yeah, absolutely. And Steve, can you say a little bit about the participation level here at Trinity? I mean, a lot of kids play sports here at Trinity.
Sure. So that's the balance, and sometimes the tension is working on participation versus competitiveness. And I think what we try to offer and what we're still striving to offer is a progressively competitive program. So we'd love to have as big a funnel at the bottom as we can at the middle school level, and it's an awesome opportunity to have 6th through 12th grade all playing sports because we can develop great programs, and that's something we're continuing to strive for is a program approach where we have upper school coaches working with our middle school coaches and our JV coaches. So when they get to the JV and varsity level, they've heard some of that same terminology. Not that we're going to ask a middle school team to run the exact same plays and offenses and all those things that our varsity and JV teams are running, but terminology can be similar. Things we're teaching can certainly be similar. And so working on those things, and as we work our way through the program, there may be opportunities to play, and I think middle school level is an opportunity to play and try out different sports. And maybe the first time they put on a Trinity uniform, played for a team. But as they work their way through the program, identify where their strengths are, where their gifts are. And then as we get higher up through the programs, there may be where we do have cuts and we have students make decisions on what teams they're going to participate on, and then maybe steer them in different directions. And I've heard some great stories from the past of students who have been cut from a sport and they've tried a different sport and they've really gone on to excel at that. So I'd say we work on a progressively competitive program and great opportunity from our middle school up through our varsity teams.
Yeah. And we have at least one sport each season that is not a cut sport.
That's right.
So a student can play a sport in any given season. And that opportunity for participation is such a wonderful thing that we provide here at Trinity. If you look at the number of students that play at least one sport in middle school and upper school, it's in the, depending on the gender and the division, it's 60, 70, 80%.
That's right.
Yeah, so it's great. And a lot of the things that we would say about athletics too, we could also have said about other teams. We have a robotics team here, and many of the same lessons that are learned in those. We often talk about that as the sport of the mind, and if we had a debate team, we could talk about that too. So team is just a place where so many of these incredible life lessons are learned. Mm-hmm. And when that happens under the guidance of Christian coaches and teachers, it's a really powerful thing.
I think the commitment that Coach Larson mentioned, we do have a wide range of student athletes here, and we have some, as you mentioned, that do want to go on and play collegiately, and that's fantastic. And we have so many that just want to play while they're here at Trinity and then maybe go on to college and play at the club level or intramural level. And the great thing about what we strive to do here is, and it can be messy, it definitely can be, and it can be a tension, but within the course of that season, all those student athletes are committed the same way during that season. And we want them to strive for that, and we want our coaches to hold them all to the same standard during the course of that season. And seeing those different groups come together is really special, and seeing the higher level really encourage and bring out the best in the others and vice versa is a really, really special thing.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Steve, I'd like to invite you to come back in a couple of weeks, and let's have another conversation, and we'll have other folks join us, especially about this. It's really important, how do we balance at Trinity the competitiveness and the excellence that we want in the program with the opportunity for many to participate. And that does create some real tensions, but real opportunities for the school too. And so I think that's a really important conversation, and we'll continue with this in a couple of weeks.
That'd be great.
But I want to thank both of you for your time today. The athletic program is so important to the school. Whenever anyone asks me why we have sports at Trinity, this is what I talk about. It helps us deliver the mission, the Christian mission of the school, in really powerful ways. And you'll find that in our expanded mission statement. If you go on to our website and you look at our expanded mission statement, especially under that section called of Unhurried, you will see discussions of athletics exactly along the lines of what we've been talking about here today. So thank you for your leadership, and thanks for talking with me today.
Thank you.
Go Lions.
That's right.
Go Lions.
Go Lions.